Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's get started with Week 45's Word Nerd Wednesday. Now, last week we learned more about the Green Bough of Returning, Oyolaire, Ever Summer, along with the names of two ships that it would have graced, Pelarin, the Far Wanderer, and Hirolonde, Haven Finder. Today we're going to take a look at two flowers that were brought by the Eldar to the beautiful wedding of Eldarion and Erendis, Lyswin and Elenor. Now, last week we read about how the Eldar graced the wedding of Erendis for love of the people of the Westlands who were closest in their friendship. Their ship was laden with flowers for the adornment of the feast, so that all that sat there, when evening was come, were crowned with Elenor and sweet Lyswin, whose fragrance brings heart's ease. Now, we don't know much about Lyswin, but a translation note in The Road Goes Ever On, looking at the line in Galadriel's lament, Mi oromardi Lisa Mirvorova, translates Lisa Mirvor as sweet nectar or sweet mead, so it seems likely that the element lys is an unattested cognate to Quenya Lysae, meaning sweet. In Flora of Middle-earth, Walter S. Judd and Graham A. Judd write, "It was perhaps an herb with white fragrant flowers. Lyswin grew on the Lonely Isle and was never established on Númenor. As far as we know, its sole occurrence in Middle-earth was at this momentous wedding." I do love the effect as it's described, whose fragrance brings heart's ease. It's a little Middle-earth aromatherapy, so I can't help imagining it as smelling maybe a bit like lavender. I don't know. Maybe I'm just making that up. Elenor, on the other hand, we know a lot more about, or at least a bit more about. Back in the chapter Lothlorien, Haldir brings the fellowship to Ceren Amroth, where ever bloom the winter flowers in the unfading grass. And one of those is the flower Elenor. Now, it's one of those elvish words that we hear so much and is so easy to say because of its English sound-alike, that it all sort of runs together. But stop and look at the word, and you'll see that it's actually made up of two very familiar Sindarin elements. El, star, like Elrond and Elendil, and Anor, sun, like Minas Anor, and Anorian. And that's pretty much exactly how it's translated in Parma Eldalamberon number 17, where Tolkien translates Elenor as sun star. Now, this is a purely fictitious flower. This isn't an elvish name for a flower that we have in the real world. In letter number 312 to Amy Ronald, written in November 1969, Tolkien suggested that Elenor might be like a pimpernel, perhaps a little enlarged, growing sun-golden flowers and star-silver ones on the same plant, and sometimes the two combined. With a description like that, you can understand why the flower is simply called a sun star. But of course, Elenor isn't just a flower. As we'll see on the PPP in just a few weeks, on March 25th, Shire Reckoning 1421, Sam and Rosie's first daughter is born, and she is named Elenor. This is a particularly symbolic name for Sam to give to his daughter because, as we know, hobbits tend to name their baby girls after flowers or jewels, as we read in Appendix F. But Sam has just gone on a huge adventure. He's returned an elf friend, a hero of the West, enchanted by his experiences. He doesn't want to just choose some ordinary flower name. Instead, he chooses an elvish flower name for a flower that's associated with fairy and the elves. So it's both traditional and also completely original. In fact, we actually get to see Sam's thought process in the last chapter of the book. I'm going to read it now. I'm sure it's a longish passage, but it'll show exactly how Sam, with Frodo's help, comes to this name as both a nod to tradition and also a name that's beautiful enough for his beloved daughter. "Well, Mr. Frodo," he said, "I'm in a bit of a fix. Rose and me had settled to call him Frodo, with your leave. But it's not him, it's her. Though as pretty a maid child as anyone could hope for, taking after Rose more than me, luckily. So we don't know what to do." "Well, Sam," said Frodo, "what's wrong with the old customs? Choose a flower name like Rose. Half the maid children in the Shire are called by such names, and what could be better?" "I suppose you're right, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "I've heard some beautiful names on my travels, but I suppose they're a bit too grand for daily wear and tear, as you might say. The gaffer, he says make it short and then you won't have to cut it short before you can use it. But if it's to be a flower name, then I don't trouble about the length. It must be a beautiful flower because, you see, I think she is very beautiful and is going to be beautifuler still." I love that. Beautifuler still. Frodo thought for a moment. Well, Sam, what about Eleanor, the sun star? You remember the little golden flower in the grass of Lothlorien? You're right again, Mr. Frodo, said Sam, delighted. That's what I wanted. So Sam names his daughter Eleanor, and he's definitely not the only Tolkien fan who has named their daughter Eleanor. It's a wonderfully stealthy Tolkien-inspired name because, of course, it's just an altered spelling of an actual primary world woman's name. And as I've mentioned on the PPP, my daughter was named after the flower, and Sam's daughter, I suppose, because it's a really great way to give a child a Tolkien-inspired name without dooming them to a life of being teased at school. And folks, that is it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Come back next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, please let me know by emailing barnaman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a lot more. And join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.